Yo, hey guys, it's SmallmouthCrush. Today's episode's going to be real quick. We're just talking about different types of treble hooks, whether it be an extra wide gap or a triple grip or a round bend, and some of the different applications that I use. It's all coming up. Alright, so we got a weather delay here. I'm just sitting at the hotel parking lot, just waiting for tournament day, which was actually supposed to be today, but we got some wind gusts and small craft advisory, so we're gonna make a couple videos. All right, so I carry a variety of treble hooks with me at all times to change them out. Sometimes they'll get dull if you hit a lot of rocks, catch a lot of fish, get a snag, bend it out. So carry them with me. And really the two different types, and I have different sizes of course, but a round bend, and I use the triple grips, the short shank triple grips a lot. These are the two main types of treble hooks that I carry. Then of course I do carry different colors. I carry them in red as well, but that's for a whole nother video. But let's get into the applications of when you would throw a EWG or a round bend. So the two type of scenarios when I'll use a triple grip versus a round bend. For the most part, when that fish is extremely active and extremely biting the bait, I'm going to use a triple grip hook. The reason being is I believe that the fish is going to stay pinned, going to stay hooked up through a jump, through the fight, till you get them back and can land the fish. I think a triple grip is really going to come into play for you guys if you start throwing them on your crankbaits. So quick story, back in the day, so I've been using triple grips for years, actually before I started bass fishing. When they first came out, I used to do a lot of trolling for walleyes, and we would be long lining baits, you know, 50, 60, 70 yards behind the boat. And when that walleye bites, oftentimes because your boat's moving, you have a lot of resistance, you're still, you know, pushing forward, whether it be at 1, 2, 3 miles an hour, and then you have that drag of the fish. Oftentimes we would lose fish with just a round bend treble hook when we were trolling. Once we switched over to triple grips on all of our walleye baits, when we would get a fish on, more oftentimes than not, it would stay hooked, and you would literally always need a pliers to take that hook out of that fish's mouth. So when I started bass fishing, it really started, I think a lot of guys were using triple grips, at least in the walleye scene back where I'm from in Wisconsin, way before some of the bass guys started switching out their hooks on their crankbaits and different baits. Now when I'm going to use a round bend is when that fish is just slashing at the bait, and that happens on topwater a lot. That will also happen on crankbaits, lipless baits, especially jerk baits, where that fish is just going to come up and slap it. And you can know that's happening when you hook that fish outside the mouth more often than not. That's when a round bend is really going to come into play for you, and it's going to allow you to get that hook in that fish's mouth. Now, you still got to be careful when that fish jumps, because it's not an extra wide gap, because that hook point isn't coming back inside. When that fish bites, you're still going to lose them. But the problem is, if you had an extra wide gap hook on a jerk bait and that fish slaps at it and not fully biting it in their mouth, those triple grips just are not designed to really catch that fish when it slaps at the bait. It's more designed when that fish grabs it, has it in its mouth, you're not going to really lose that fish. So that's when you would make those determinations and decide which type of hook to use, depending on the bite, really, as well as the application. So when am I going to throw a round bend? Pretty much all the time. A topwater bait, like a spook, a walking bait, they might be crushing it, but there's going to be times when that fish is going to just come up and bump the bait, and those round bends are going to allow me to get a hook, hopefully somewhere in that fish's face. So I'll always throw a round bend on a topwater bait, whether it be a walking bait, a popping bait like this pop bar here. That's going to have a round bend. Here it has a feather on the back, but that's also a round bend hook. Lipless, now that's a little tricky. That can really be depending on the situation, but I feel more times than not, I'm gonna want round bends on that rattle trap, on that lipless crankbait. They could be really biting it really good, and lipless sometimes real tricky. Sometimes it's hard to get that fish back in the boat. And another reason why I'll throw round bends is I feel, because I use lipless around grass a lot, and I feel like it just comes through the grass. I can rip it out of the grass a little bit better with round bends versus triple grips. Same way with jerk baits. They might be crushing it, but that round bend, especially with that erratic motion, when you're jerking that bait through the water, fish comes up and slaps it. I don't want to take a chance of not getting that fish hooked. Whether or not I get them in the boat's a different story. I would much rather have a round bend on a jerk bait. So crankbaits, whether it be a deep diving crankbait, a mid-depth crankbait, shallow crankbait, a square bill. Here's a DT10 and here's just a 1.5 square bill. I will more than likely have extra wide gap triple grip hooks on these baits. I just feel I get a much better bite to boat ratio when I'm using extra wide gap hooks on my crankbaits. So there you go. I promise it's a quick video. It's real simple. I try to keep things simple when I'm fishing. Get yourself some extra wide gap treble hooks as well as round bends, and then start experimenting. You guys might have some different ideas on what bait you like to use. In the comments below, I'd love to hear your stories on when you use an extra wide gap hook versus a round bend. So, hey, don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Leave any likes and comments below. And as always, until next time, we'll see you guys on the water.